Oh, she did get hit. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, shit. Let's go, Ling. Gluttony ass up. Oh, wow. Yeah. Look at this. Look at this. Ah. Oh. Brute force. Sometimes it can be effective. Oh. Ah, okay. Wow. Oh. Sure. How can he possibly let Ling out of here now? Whoa. Is that? She deserves to know. I completely forgot to mention it in my discussion. She'll find out sooner or later, so I felt that Ed should have told her, right? Sometimes you do have to do the tough things. A father figure for many. Maze Hughes. Look at that. Ooh. That one guy, huh? Right. That's gonna hit hard, all right. Yeah. It's mercy. I was just gonna say, just like he put off telling her about her parents and this man, Scar. Oh, oh. Oh, man. Ah.
内乱のイシュバールに赴いて殲滅戦の命令が出た後もイシュバール人を助け続けた。待て兄さん。てめえを助けててめえが殺した医者夫婦に覚えはねえか。何の話？ウィンリー。嘘。
I was not expecting her to show up here.
助けた人に殺されなきゃならないようなこと何もしてないでしょ。返してよ。
Oh boy.
やめろ。それはダメだ。ウィンリー、やめてくれ。恨みたい気持ちはわかる。だが復讐は新たな復讐の芽を育てるだけだ。
Ah, look at this.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
He gets it all right. He gets it. Oh. Oh. Let's go.
そんな研究放っておいて。
待て、もう少しなんだ。
なんだその入れ。
Yeah, I was gonna say.
ああ、これか。錬金術の基本は理解。
He doesn't have them yet.
再構築だ。この右腕が分解。左腕の再構築。東の練炭術を研究し、私なりにアレンジした。その上で分かったことなんだが。
Is that Zeke's voice?
どうもこの国の錬金術はおかしい。
お前の兄が国家錬金術師に対抗してて、
さらにそれを超える強大な力で軍を壊滅させる方法を見つけ出すかもしれないのだ。
力を超える力で
錬金術で奴らに報復を。
血の報いを。
Retaliation breeds retaliation.
人のため幸福のためと願っても誰もそうは見てくれぬではないか。
Oh my goodness, I mean, that's really leaning into the parallels.
これが錬金術か。イシュバールを救うというのか。
He even kind of resembles Zeke. The glasses and like the demeanor.
皆逃げる準備をしていたのが幸いだった。
間に合った。大事なものをまとめていて遅れた。
大事な。
That's Zeke's voice. It's gotta be.
これ、お前が持っててくれ。私の研究所だ。これしか持ち出せなかった。持って逃げてくれ。
ちょっと待て。
私にもしものことがあったら、せっかくの研究がパーになる。情けない兄だ。
兄じゃ。
Oh man. Oh, right. They showed the aftermath of this. God damn it. God damn it, Kimberly. Why do you have to be so damn cool? But again, I know the aftermath of it. They showed that one quick flashback.
しっかりしろ。死ぬな。
Oh. So he?
血が止まらん。
Whoa, he's going to perform something here.
弟の腕は。
Oh my god, he's gonna give him his arm?
父さん、母さん。
That would explain the ink.
誰か。生きろ。死んではいけない。
They showed this before as well, right?
気づいた。
Oh man.
動かないで。
That's them.
傷が開くわ。あなた来て。あなた。
まだ安静にしてなきゃダメだ。誰か。
The blue eyes, yeah.
彼も一緒に連れてってくれ。
There it is.
兄じゃか。兄じゃは助かった。
No, my guy, that's your arm.
鎮静剤。
Oh my god. Oh, oh. That shot of Kimberly though.
ハメストレス。貴様ら。貴様らに。
ロックベル先生。
Wow. Devastation.
殺すか。それもいいだろう。どちらかが滅ぶまで憎しみの連鎖は止められん。だが忘れるな。あの内乱で先に引き金を引いたのはアメストリス人貴様らであることを。
Oh He's so smug. Oh, wow. He's beginning to experience things. Ah! Not the kitty! Go on, take that. Take the gun.
ウェンディ銃を離せ。
撃てなかった。父さんと母さんを殺したんだよ。エドとハルも殺そうとして。なのにどうして？
Wow. Look at this.
ラッシュバレーで赤ん坊を取り上げて
Yeah, she can't take a
親
life.
子を救った。俺に立ち上がるための手と足をくれた。
Oh, look at that.
お前の手は人を殺す手じゃない。人を生かす手だ。
Oh, beautiful.
だから
Let it all out. Again. Love the ending theme kicking in. Great episode, man. Great episode. Listen, I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but it has to be stated. It does. That is yet another contender for best episode of the series so far. Right? It's a legitimate contender. It really could be the best episode I've seen so far. Right? That's crazy, man. That's crazy. This series is just living up to all my expectations, all the hype, over the years. I mean, years of hype. And that's not always the case. And the crazy thing about all of this is that it's episode 22 out of 64. Like, I'm not even at the midpoint. And these kinds of things are happening. So, the story, perhaps I can't even begin to comprehend the direction the story might be heading into, 10 episodes from now or 15 episodes from now. I mean, the episode as a whole, beautifully written, beautifully scored, beautifully animated. I mean, some of the frames, some of the imagery in this episode is some of the standout imagery of the series so far. I mean, the imagery that is present throughout this episode is really quite evocative, right? A lot of times it's difficult to look at. It's difficult to kind of think of. It's striking. It's striking in that sense. And of course, I love that I'm still getting so many different new pieces of music here. One of the standouts is in a section that could easily be forgotten given how the rest of the episode plays out. But, Ling against Gluttony and King Bradley, that is such a great segment. That whole fight sequence is just beautiful, right? Again, some of the really fantastic animation is a standout in that sequence. Up on the rooftop and then, kind of carrying through into that abandoned building. But, the music, the score accompanying that scene, oh my goodness. Listen, to me, an engaging score, a fitting score is one that really starts getting me into the moment, right? You might have noticed in many of my different projects I do on YouTube, I'm not afraid to jam out to the music. I'm not afraid to feel the music. And this goes beyond just content on YouTube. That's just how I've always been, especially for film, right? Film scores and television scores and scores for games, for anything really. I'm a big fan. And I'm really able to get into it, right? And that's not always the case. Sometimes there are some generic background scores that kind of just serve the purpose of, assisting the sequences that are playing out on screen. But then there's these types of scores, the engaging ones. You think of Shingeki, you think of Death Note. Death Note maybe is one that didn't ultimately live up to all that crazy hype going into it. But, the score is one of the elements that was really one of the standouts for sure. And then, of course, in Fullmetal, same thing. Supremely engaging score. And speaking of the score, the music, that ending score, once again, used masterfully to transition into that final poignant scene. I mean, that scene right there is one of the best of the entire series as well. I think I could say that for many of the moments in this episode. You get to see Ed's compassionate side, his gentle side, his caring and loving side, his wise side. It is a beautiful sequence. It's a beautiful moment. The animation plays a big part. The voice acting plays a big part. And of course, that score transitioning in at just the right moment. You know, the instrumentals slowly fading in. You know, let it all out indeed. You know, thematically, that ending song is so perfect for this anime, right? And the themes of this anime. I think this episode continues that strong and effective depiction of grief, right? And trauma, and how people handle trauma differently. But Scar's character arc continues to be one of the most intriguing of the story. I mean, you know, here you could see maybe there is a shift, you know, that opening, right? The beginning stages of that potential redemption arc I spoke of in a few of my discussions. I think this is it. This could be the turning point. And I actually think Winry could end up playing a substantial role in that, you know, potential or possible redemption arc, right? There is a shift in demeanor, right? It was subtle, but you could see the impact, the effect that encounter had, especially that specific encounter. And, you know, that moment that kind of triggered something in his mind, you know, that trauma that he's been carrying for a long time. You know, this is a traumatized figure. And, you know, I must admit, you know, I do tend to kind of gravitate towards these types of characters, you know, traumatized souls, you know, walking the lonely path, and then how they go on to deal with that trauma that they carry, right? So yeah, you know, in that sense, Scar is really quite up my alley in terms of character. I mean, it really is quite tragic how a monk was turned into a murderer because of the war. And, you know, that cycle of retribution and hate almost claimed another one, right, in Winry. But no, you know, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Thankfully, it didn't happen because, you know, Ed, you know, speaking of Ed's compassionate side, his caring side, he knew that, you know, if she does this, it's going to change her forever. That he simply cannot allow his dear friend to lose her humanity, right? Lose who she is. And he's spot on. He's spot on. And it's beautifully delivered, isn't it? You know, that him slowly, finger by finger, getting that gun out of her hands. You know, it's almost as if it's kind of counting on her fingers, all the special things these hands have done, right? Hands that are following in the footsteps of her late parents, essentially, right? And, you know, the fact that Scar ended up killing them, you know, doctors, healers, you know, special people, they are. That must be the type of guilt that just crushes you constantly, right? He must be carrying that still. And listen, you know, it's certainly tough to watch, and it certainly feels like the type of thing that someone can't come back from, you know, killing innocent people like that. You know, again, not just any innocent people, doctors and healers essentially that are there to help his people. But, you know, looking at it from his perspective, he is traumatized in that moment. He's seeing red. He's simply not in the right state of mind in that moment, you know, especially building on that tragedy that just happened to his family. Then he comes to, sees the arm, you know, for a split moment, he's thankful and he's happy. Oh, okay, brother, you made it. But no, then he sees that it's attached to his own body, right? So his brother, who is clearly voiced by the same voice actor as Zeke Yeager, I'll put down $100 on that right now. You know, take it to the bank. That's got to be Zeke Yeager's voice. It's quite distinct, isn't it? And I love how he's actually playing a similar character in this as well, right? Kind of similar, you know. I'm sure many can see the similarities there. But yeah, you know, much like Ed made the sacrifice, you know, to bring Al's soul back, you know, gave up the right arm. You see that Scar's brother does something really quite similar, right? So, you know, they do have a lot of similarities. Ed and Scar, that is, in many different aspects. But the thing now is, he's choosing to see red at this point. You know, now it's a premeditated and a cold and calculated campaign of vengeance and retribution. Listen, he understands. He understands the things that he's doing, right? But he's choosing to do them. He's choosing to stay on that path. And, you know, I've spoken of this, especially after that moment, his sensei, Shifu, kind of, you know, implores him to, you know, steer clear of this path. You know, nothing good's going to come out of it. It's just going to continue that chain of hatred, right? That chain of retaliation And at that moment in time, as the gun is pointed at him, he understands. He completely understands her stance, and he thinks it's justified, right? Just like how Mustang felt that, yeah, Scar's retribution and his, need for vengeance is justified, right? Mustang's not delusional either. He understands the role he played and all of them played in that war. That is brutally depicted in this flashback. There's some really tough imagery to look at. And of course, the parallels are kind of unmissable, right? The blue eyes. Yes, it feels like a creative choice because, I like how they're kind of giving us Scar's perspective, because earlier in the series, you see the perspective from the military, right? Or the military's perspective, or through their eyes, right? And in those flashbacks, you see the red eyes and brown skin, I believe, right? Being depicted. But now you flip it here, you see that the blue eyes and, the facial features and the expressions are kind of seared into Scar's mind, right? To him, it's this mechanical, soulless machine that's there to just exterminate them. So he, in that moment, as he's seeing red, he's kind of associating even the rock bells to that. So as a visual trigger, it's really quite effective, isn't it? Of course, not all of them are bad per se. A lot of them are just following orders from the higher ups. And, this kind of leans into Roy Mustang's crusade as well. But at that moment in time, everyone is painted in the same light, right? From Scar's perspective, but also, beyond the creative choice, and him associating everyone with, that image of the oppressor. Clearly, there's a direct parallel here to the Third Reich and Nazi Germany as well, right? I think that's pretty clear. And, I mentioned some of the striking imagery throughout this episode, the devastation, the aftermath of it all. It really is quite memorable, isn't it? Even though it is quite dark, it is memorable. Some of that imagery of Scar climbing the hill. And then, the next frame, the shot of the lifeless tree as Scar comes into frame, and then he sees the devastation ahead of him. I mean, the screams he lets out, incredible voice acting, of course, right? It's haunting. It really is quite haunting. And the crazy thing about all of this is that he ends up seeing himself in the same position as the person, or one of the people that are responsible for inflicting this immense trauma, and that is Kimberly, right? That transition from him almost, kind of about to attack, and then Ed jumps in front of Winry, right? Direct parallel, right? I mean, it's shown on screen, of course, but, it's a key moment. I think it's a crucial moment because now he's become the one thing he hated most. And then, of course, on the opposite end, there's also the parallels to his own brother jumping in front of him to save him, right? And of course, later on, he gives him his arm. So essentially, his brother, his late brother, whose name I didn't really quite catch. I don't think they said his name, right? But yeah, he transmuted his own arm to Scar's, right? But it's just the one arm, right? The destruction alchemy arm. But in that sense, I just love how Mei Chang has been kind of introduced into that character arc as well. I think she is going to play a role. And also, before I move on from that scene, it actually even reminded me of a scene from Breaking Bad. I know. But, remember that moment as, Walter is kind of freaking out. And, he's actually quite dangerous in that moment. He is a danger to both of them, or at least Skylar in that moment. He cuts her. He does cut her in his state of rage. And you see Junior, right? Junior jumps in front of Skylar. And that moment hits him like a brick. It hits him like a truck. Him realizing, oh my goodness, I've become a monster. That's the feeling I was getting here. That was the same thing Scar must have been feeling. Oh my goodness, look at this. I've become the monster. I've become the thing I hated most. But in terms of Scar's character arc and progression, it appears that these could be the beginning stages of the deconstruction phase of that character arc, right? I love how that kind of just, seamlessly ties in as well, right? Essentially at this stage of his metamorphosis, things are happening that are essentially breaking down his current state of being. And then, of course, enabling the slow return of his true nature, his authentic self, right? His core essence, the psyche that is supposed to represent the fullest version of the person he is supposed to be, right? So I think the signs are there. I think this is the turning point. But some of that sins of the father element is certainly brought back in here, right? Because if you look at it, yes, Ed wasn't there for any of that. He wasn't, but he is also part of that regime now, right? He accepted that position. Listen, he's got his own reasons, of course. He has different reasons, but that tag, the dogs of the military, it exists for a reason, right? It's there for a reason. So, it's a really fascinating approach, isn't it, to have the protagonist of this story, or one of the major protagonists of this story, alongside Al as well and some of the others, but having him part of this regime is really quite fascinating. It really is. And I think there is potential for that to be explored. Ed really thinking about the choice he made to become a state alchemist, right? And the connotations of it and the things it represents, right? To others. And the symbol it is to others, the dark symbol. And, back then, even in episode 1, as Isaac McDougall is trying to, help him see or implore him to look at the bigger picture, Ed wasn't really open to that at that moment in time. He was thinking about his own goals and the things he needs to get done, right? Of course, getting his brother's body back and kind of leading into more of that research, right? So listen, he might not have been a part of all of that in Ishwal, but by association, by joining up, by becoming a state alchemist, there are some connotations attached to that. And in terms of going back to earlier episodes, let's go back to episode 2 and, Riza, Hawkeye, and Winry in that room. She asked Hawkeye her reasoning for becoming a soldier, right? Have you shot someone before? And of course, Hawkeye told her, I have someone to protect. Of course, the next scene, or it cuts to Roy Mustang entering that room as Frieza Hawkeye has a smile on her face. I think she had a smile. I'm pretty sure she had a smile on her face. But you could tell that Winry knew, right? She just knew that this is not right. Yes, she's questioning herself. Why couldn't I shoot that man? He killed my parents. He's about to kill my dear friends, right? But why couldn't I do it? Because she knew, deep inside she knew, this is not the right reason. But, the one thing that did kind of feel a bit contrived is her showing up at the right place at the right time, right? And she happens to overhear that segment of the conversation as well, right? So yes, it's a bit contrived, but of course, all of that was brought on because of the backs in the distance moment, right? The title of the episode, right? It's this reoccurring theme in her life, right? She sees her parents leave for the last time, right? Backs in the distance. Maze Hughes, last time she sees him, backs in the distance. And then, a few episodes ago, she sees and notices how broad Ed's shoulders have become, or have they always been that broad? She did not want that to be the last time she sees her dear friends, right? So for that reason, she does end up going into a dangerous zone. And you see that theme in the opening as well, the first opening, right? It's Winry looking at the backs of Ed and Al. But yeah, let me go back to the opening fight sequence. Lang finally steps into the limelight. He is damn impressive. He is so impressive. He's got Lan Fan on his shoulder. He's kind of going toe-to-toe with Bradley. Though, of course, I'm not sure if Bradley is going all out because, like I mentioned in the last discussion, man, Bradley is the last person you want to go up against. He's devastatingly effective and he's ruthless. But again, the fight didn't end yet. It kind of just leaves off on a bit of a cliffhanger, I suppose. Especially because now Bradley has definitely revealed himself to be a homunculus, right? Ling seen the eye, that's for sure. But again, I bring it back to that point. King Bradley asked him once again, or not once again, he asked him the question, how did you know? Who are you people? How did you know about there being others inside of Gluttony? Right? Yet, again, nothing of the sort is mentioned about Bradley, right? Interesting, because he is one of them. He is, right? But he doesn't seem to have a similar aura or a similar chi to Gluttony, who, according to Ling and Lan Fan even, has a lot of souls, a lot of people within, right? A lot of souls, essentially. But here, there's no comedic relief. Here, this is the real deal. Ling steps out. The real Ling is certainly on display here. I love Ling's king speech, that a king exists for his people. And, without those people, he is no king at all, right? So he certainly believes that political power originates from the people and that a king should be a public servant in that sense. Of course, there's a bit of a clash of ideologies there, because King Bradley has no time for any of that, right? He thinks he's quite naive to think like that. But I also thought that description kind of fits Roy Mustang, right? Just recently, once again, they reiterate that he is a man of the people, that he is nothing without his people. And I do think he is kind of, trying to become the type of king Ling is describing. And of course, it gives you an insight on Ling as well, right? And the type of person he is. That at no point did he think of leaving Lan Fan behind. No chance. I already loved Ling before, but now look at this. He's taking the next step up. So yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm really quite excited for the progression of that fight. And I'm also kind of scared. But yeah, I think that's about it for this phenomenal episode. Perhaps I'll end off on Kimberly. He is known as a Crimson Alchemist, right? And that makes sense. I see that depiction on screen. And I've also got to say, the grayscale tone of that flashback was so effective, especially with the blue eyes and that depiction, that perception, right, of Scar as well. But yeah, Kimberly, Jesus. Listen, man, that's a cool looking character. I've always thought he looks cool, right? Yes, he's not a good person, of course not. But, it's not as simple as that, is it? Right? A lot of times, some of these types of characters can be some of the coolest. They can be. They really can. Right? So if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like. Consider dropping some comments. Give me your thoughts. If you're interested in early access or perhaps even full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. And by the time this is out for early access, or by the time it hits YouTube, yeah, it should be 2 episodes of early access. So, if that changes anything for you, consider checking out the Patreon page. And I'm actually not done yet. I'm actually aiming for 3 episodes of early access. And then I'm hoping for 2 episodes as well down the line. I'm targeting something like Tuesdays and Fridays perhaps. But I'll have a look once I get closer to that possibility. But it's coming. It's on the horizon for sure in the near future. But yeah, thank you for joining me and thank you for your time, as time is precious. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.